welcome to the Halawa Fantasy Football League playoff recap, semifinals recap. We are down to the wire, so we have our championship game set up. So what are some of the big things that came across this week? Some interesting things. Another week of like injuries and COVID kind of hit a lot of people, and if you were healthy, that helped a lot. Yeah, so let's just get to it. We can go down the line. We'll start from the top. We'll start from the championship bracket. Oh, by the way, the drink today is a Macallan 18. I would have drank this as a celebration of winning the championship, but I'm out, so I'll just drink it now. Plus, it's too lazy to make a drink, so nothing wrong with getting some good scotch. All right, so first matchup, Mia Milo versus Hurts to Lose. Brad was the top seed, and he basically smashed me. It started out early in the week with his Thursday night game. I think he had like San Francisco. That's his team, and they were pretty competitive, but they lost as a team, I think. So if you're looking at San Francisco, he had Deebo Samuel, and he put up a really big game for him, 24.1 points. Wilson Jr., big, huge pickup, getting 14.6 points from him. Not missing a beat, even though he's a newer running back on San Francisco's roster. And then huge gains from Devontae Adams, 28 points. Dallas D had 35 points. And then just solid gains from his tight end. Kyle Pitts, 13.2. Deontay Johnson, 13.1. Even though they got smashed as a team, they did fairly well. And even though they kept Najee Harris in check, getting 15.4 points on a bad game is solid. So there was no beating Brad this week. So this is kind of pays off, to get that bye week. Because like I said, had we played last week, I would have had more points than him. But earning that top seed and that bye really helping him to take care of business here. And then if you look at from his bench, his Miami defense, which was tonight's game, had even more, 41 points. So he did leave a little bit of points. I still would have played Dallas as well. And then not much else on his bench. He basically has two more defenses. David Johnson, who has COVID-19, and Ben Roethlisberger, who underperformed. Once again, Steelers were kind of smashed. And then for me, it was a rough week. It didn't start. It was rough from the beginning because I didn't know who my running backs were going to be. I was hoping for healthy starts from DeAndre Swift and Darrell Henderson, but game day DeAndre Swift was out. DeAndre Henderson, they didn't say he was out, and he didn't play any snaps until he got in one, and then now he's out on IR. So that 1.8 is just not doing me any favors. Not much I could have done on the bench. Maybe I could have shuffled things around and got Bateman up there, but injuries just played a huge part. My tight end, who was huge last week for me, Kelsey, had COVID. So those were big points that I needed. And then the points that I needed from my big guns like Cooper Kupp and CeeDee Lamb, they never came this game. Mahomes was respectable, but this is not the kind of score that you need to be competitive, especially against a top seed like Brad. So congrats to Brad. You advance for the second consecutive year to the finals. So let's see if you can go back to back. Probably favored too, because your team is the strongest, it appears. Next up is the other playoff championship bracket game, which was James versus Eric. So in this case, similar case with James to what happened to me, is just poor performances all around. Sutton only getting him 5.3, Gaskin only getting 2.4. Ertz 9.4 is not bad. Ezekiel Elliott getting 17.6 points, even though he scored a couple of touchdowns. That's kind of low, yeah, for 2 touchdowns. I guess the yardage was low. It was a blowout. Pittman getting him 12.6, not enough to compete with Eric. He had a really strong game from Harris from New England, but he didn't start him. That would have definitely helped a little bit, but not enough to catch Eric. Eric had a strong game. Kyler Murray had a good bounce back game. Although he didn't reach the projected, at least getting 25 is solid. Jalen Waddle getting 20.2 was huge, offsetting a really bad game by Tyreek Hill. That was a blowout, but in that game, what's his name? Mahomes was going to everybody but Tyreek Hill. He only got 2 catches for 19 reception yards, but good enough for him to survive this round of the playoffs. Aaron Jones, slightly under par at 12.4. Madison was a good pickup for him, late pickup to deal with a lot of the injuries, giving him 15.8. Noah Fant only getting 4.5. Montgomery had a huge game, which also helped. And then this defensive discrepancy was kind of huge too. Seattle getting Eric 19, and then James only getting 1. He missed on the defense. Definitely would have helped had he added both Buffalo's D and Harris, Damian Harris, then he would have had a shot. So congrats to James. I think this is the deepest he's gone into the playoffs. He had a pretty solid strategy. He had the no tight end strategy this year, similar to what Eric's no kicker strategy last year. We're definitely going to try to fix some stuff, but it paid off for him to get this deep into the playoffs, and he's going to go into the consolation championship bracket and play me for 3rd place. Eric, congrats to Eric, who gets to go to the finals and gets to face Brad. And so we'll see. It seems like Eric's team is healthy for the most part, with the exception of Kareem Hunt. But this is where a lot of the skill is going to come into play, because there are going to be some teams who clinched either divisions or playoffs, and then they're going to start to rest guys, and they're going to have to pay a lot of attention to that. So we'll see how these guys do. Now we go to the consolation bracket. Brownsville Jets versus Jeremy. We can go quickly through these. Jeremy edged out Mike 119 to 103. Dak Prescott again had a huge game, throwing 4 touchdowns. Justin Jefferson had a nice bounce back game. Mecole Hardman was one of those guys that reaped the benefits of the sacrificing of both Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce. Robinson is going on IR. I think he tore his Achilles. That's why he only has 1.3 points. AJ Dillon has been a pretty solid backup. Not as good this week as last week, but a pretty good handcuff. Hidby only getting 6.6. Tyler Boyd had 16. Carlson had 6. Kansas City D had 19. Yeah, they did pretty good. So pretty smart playing them. Even though Dak Prescott had 34.5 points, Joe Burrow had 42 points. That would have been crazy. That's one of the highest scores I've seen this year. For Mike, he played Matt Ryan. It's just been tough because one of his bell cows was Lamar Jackson, and he just got hurt down the stretch and unable to play. Stephon Diggs did good, 18 points. Van Jefferson, not so good. That was a mixed bag, because even though the Rams won that game, there was a lot of miscues, and it cost a lot of guys. So in this case, Van Jefferson cost him some. Devontae Freeman got 9.6, which is okay. Ingram only 2.1. Mark Andrews, 22.5 points. making Mark Andrews tight end 1. So he's the top tight end this year. So it would have been a great combo to have Lamar Jackson and Mark Andrews. And if the health thing played out, it might have been a good strategy for Mike this year. Because he had J.K. Dobbins too, if you recall, and he was going to be the lead back, and he could have rolled them, but again, health was the issue for this team, just like many others. Antonio Brown had 15.1 points. He's kind of reaping the benefits of losing Godwin for the year and some of the other guys that went down. Boswell only 4.9 points. San Francisco D had 15, and playing it pretty well. Probably could have played Judy in place of Van Jefferson, but that's kind of a coin toss. Both Mitchell and Jackson, like we said, were out, and Gallup had 6.3 points. So this round goes to Jeremy. Next up, we have Richie versus Aaron. This is like a tragedy of sorts for Aaron, because this was a great game by Aaron, having 141.74 points, being carried by Joe Mixon's 30.3, Philadelphia having 13 points, tight end play of 18.2, and still coming across the buzzsaw that is Richie. Richie kind of like reaping the benefits of being at the bottom. Both of these guys actually being at the bottom of the waiver wires and just being able to freely pick up whoever they want. Just the way waivers were this year. And this kind of bore out in this game. These points definitely look like winners brackets points, not like what you saw from me and James, and even Eric would have lost to you guys. On the bench, Gibson had 13.4 points. That would have been a nice guy for me to have. Osborne had 15.3 points. COVID just decimated Aaron's bench, but that was okay because they had strong scores. Just a bad year by Saquon Barkley, and it's just going to be rough for him until they fix that offensive line or maybe change the system. I don't know. It's a mess in New York. There's only so much you can do despite how much talent that running back has. Yeah, so tough one. Down to the very end, if we're going to predict it, whatever next game that Aaron's going to have like 200 points, and whoever he plays is going to have 201. Sorry, Aaron, that's just your kind of year. You are the whipping boy. Next up, we have Morgan versus Cooked on a Thielen. LaRue versus LaRue. Morgan had a really bad score. Taylor, they're kind of winding down now. So Taylor had only 13.5 points. Eckler was out, so his other 1-2 tandem of running backs hurt. Sanders, it looks like he got hurt. He only had 6. Goddard, only 3.8. Parker only had nothing. New England's D had 3 points. Would have helped. You could have played Garoppolo, and that would have gave you 4 points more. But Morgan would have lost to everybody this week. It was just a really brutal week for Morgan. So even though you made it into the playoffs, Morgan, looking back last week when you played Eric, even if the dominoes fell differently and Gary played Eric would have advanced anyway, but it's the same thing. And injuries and just down the stretch, your team's falling apart. Mike had poor games from Melvin Gordon, 1.2. Kittle only had 3.1. You expect more from him. Thielen had 5.5. I know he was getting hurt a little bit. Nick Folk only having 3. Really good play from Josh Allen. T. Higgins, 37.4 points. Those are your big guys to help you carry. Papa LaRue over Sundaroo. And then our final matchup, Gary versus Darren. Gary had another huge game, carried primarily by Nick Chubb, who's back up and running, and the Tampa D, who has 33 points. And then solid scores with the exception of Henry. Javonte Williams, 9.7, was one of the lower ends, but that's good if that's one of the lower ends, because everyone else was pretty solid. Odell Beckham Jr., he had 1 receiving touchdown, 4 catches, 37 yards, giving him 11.7 points. the Rams won, but it wasn't a strong fantasy day for them. And then off the bench, Sony Michel would have been huge for you. Sony Michel would have been nice to have after Henderson went on IR for me. Definitely fixing waivers next year. Darren had only 6.84 points from Cam Newton, who got benched. Russell Gage only 4.9. Christian Kirk 8.3. These are kind of sad, these scores. Kamara only 8.2. Rob Gronkowski only getting 2.8. His best coming from his kicker and his D. So his kicker got him 15.3 points and his defense had 22. Clyde Edwards-Helaire was okay, 10.5. I think he got hurt, so he's going to be day-to-day going into the playoffs. He had a really strong bench, though. Like, look at these guys. Rashad Penny, 21.2 points. I don't know if this would have got you the win, but it definitely would have helped. Amon-Ra St. Brown, look to him next year as being one of the upper echelon receivers. He's turning out to be the best rookie receiver of the bunch, 21.7. Waddle's another pretty good one. Howard, only 7.5, but then Burkhead had 30.1 points. So that is a funky situation there in Houston. Like, I don't know. It's a coin toss. Somebody's going to do really good or the backs are all going to stink. Butker was out with what is that? He was out with COVID. So smart pickup for Darren to pick up Fry, but not enough to beat Gary. So there's the weekly recap. The rest of the rounds is going to be consolation, and we have our final. We have Hurts to lose versus, I don't know, Kirby with a coffee. What is that? Prince Lama versus Brad. So
Alright, boys.
we'll see.
See you later.
We'll see who's favorite. I don't know. I can't preview it yet because it won't update until tomorrow. It wasn't as bad of a COVID. We actually kind of had hoped they would move the Kansas City game to today. Or not today, or to Tuesday. Then maybe it would have had a chance to get Kelsey to play. But Brad was really strong. But like we said, these two did really well. Eric was hit by injuries, and he was able to make savvy enough moves to get out of it. And then Brad, too, was successful in choosing guys that mostly remained healthy and solid and consistent. That's a skill in itself. And then even though he had like one or two guys come out, he was able to somehow get guys to plug in and continue on. So that definitely takes some skill, especially for these two. So we'll see who wins next week. Next week is our final, Brad versus Eric. Yeah, so there you go. As far as like we said, we'll fix some things. We'll fix the waivers for sure. Maybe change a little bit of tweaking of the point systems, trying to help receiving a little bit. And then in particular, I want to help the tight ends, but you can't help the tight ends without also affecting wide receivers and running backs catch. But there's got to be something we can do. And then defense is going to have to be toned down a little bit. Maybe turn up the kicker just a little bit more. Actually, no, the kicker's fine. But definitely the defense, because every single stat for the defense is a point, right? A sack is a point. 3 and out is a point. Turnover on downs is a point. Tackle for loss is a point. All of those add up. So those are going to have to turn into like partial points. Those are going to be turned into like, I don't know, 0.2 or 0.5 depending on the difficulty. And then that maybe should tone the defenses down a little bit, and then we get a little bit more balance. I like to try to have balanced scores across the board of the entire roster. But yeah, so look forward to next week. We'll see who comes out on top, Eric or Brad.